Everything you think you know about the murderous mind is wrong. The greatest criminals in history are not mindless monsters, but cold, calculating, and often invisible. Do you believe that every killer is born this way? Or what traumas are always to blame? Psychology reveals something disturbing. Anyone can develop a murderous mind under the right circumstances. And the scariest thing? You may have met someone like this without realizing it. Stay until the end, because today you will understand how this mind works and what it can reveal about you. In 2014, the disappearance of a young pregnant woman in the California desert revealed a web of manipulation, betrayal, and violence that no one could have imagined. Behind the facade of a respectable ex-military, Christopher Brandon Lee hid a disturbing personality that would culminate in one of the most intriguing cases in modern criminal psychology. Christopher Brandon Lee presented himself as the archetype of the model American citizen, a former Marine, married, a family man, and an active member of his community. Born in Anchorage, Alaska, Lee grew up in a military environment, with his father serving in the Air Force. This military influence from an early age shaped his personality and his life choices. At the age of 18, he enlisted in the Marine Corps, following a family tradition that apparently provided him with stability and purpose. However, later analyses of his behavior during military service revealed troubling patterns of emotional instability and need for control, traits that remained dormant under the rigid military structure. Her early marriage to Nicole Lee and the birth of her daughter seemed to complete the picture of a structured and successful life. However, records of his married life began to reveal significant fissures. Testimonials from acquaintances indicated that Lee demonstrated a pattern of controlling behavior in his relationships, masked by an apparent dedication to his family. Experts in criminal psychology have identified at this stage the first signs of a narcissistic personality disorder, evidenced by the constant need for admiration and the difficulty in establishing genuine emotional connections. During his time at the military base in 29 Palms, California, Lee developed a complex web of extramarital relationships, including his fatal involvement with Erin Corwin. The analysis of his social interactions in this period reveals a pattern of manipulative behavior where he maintained multiple simultaneous relationships, demonstrating a remarkable capacity for emotional compartmentalization. This ability to maintain different personas, depending on the social context, is often associated with individuals with psychopathic traits, particularly the ability to maintain a facade of normalcy while engaging in destructive behaviors. The period immediately leading up to the crime was marked by an escalation of risky behavior. Lee began to show more obvious signs of instability, including sudden mood swings and impulsive decisions. His relationship with Erin Corwin, a 19-year-old married to another military man, became increasingly intense and problematic. Erin's pregnancy represented a critical breaking point, threatening to publicly expose her duplicity. Behavioral analyses suggest that this was the catalyst that transformed a controlling personality into a homicidal one, demonstrating how external pressures can precipitate violent actions in individuals with specific psychological predispositions. The tense investigation of Lee's military record revealed a disturbing pattern of unreported incidents. Platoon colleagues, speaking on condition of anonymity, described episodes in which Lee displayed a calculating coolness during combat operations that went beyond what was expected even for a trained Marine. The dark side of his personality manifested itself in times of intense stress, where he exhibited an unsettling ability to emotionally disconnect from violent situations. This trait, common in individuals with psychopathic tendencies, allowed him to maintain an appearance of calm and control even in extremely volatile circumstances. Looking at the chronology of events, it is possible to notice subtle changes in Lee's behavior months before the brutal crime. Her apparent overconfidence may have contributed to minor flaws in her carefully constructed routine. Security cameras, text messages, and accounts from people close to him began to form an intriguing picture of his activities. Some experts in criminal behavior suggest that this may be an example of what they call deterioration of control, where the pressure to maintain different versions of oneself eventually leads to significant slip-ups. Analyzing the behavioral patterns presented by Lee, It is possible to draw parallels with characteristics often associated with individuals who demonstrate predatory tendencies in structured social environments. His military background, which provided tactical training and discipline, combined with his apparent ability to build superficial but compelling relationships, may have created a unique situation. The communications recovered during the investigation suggest a possible pattern of alternation between intense displays of affection and subtle intimidation, a dynamic that some scholars associate with emotional control techniques. As new details about the case continue to emerge, even years after the conviction, intriguing questions arise about the complexity of Christopher Brandon Lee's personality. The latest testimony and evidence raise the possibility that the Erin Corwin case may be just the tip of a deeper behavioral iceberg. Scholars of criminal behavior often point out that extreme actions rarely occur in isolation. They are usually part of a progression of behaviors that develop over time. This case continues to generate important debates about the warning signs in seemingly stable environments and the possible ways to identify worrying patterns before they escalate into violence. The relationship between Christopher Lee and Erin Corwin began in a seemingly innocent way, like many stories of neighbors in a military community. Erin, newly married and only 19 years old, had moved to the 29 Palms base with her husband, a Marine. The difference in age and experience between Lee and Erin may have created a particular dynamic. He, a married veteran with years of military service, and she, a young woman still adjusting to life as a military wife. The circumstances suggest that Lee may have identified in Erin characteristics that made her particularly vulnerable to emotional manipulation techniques. As the relationship developed, troubling patterns began to emerge. Messages recovered during the tense investigation show a possible escalation in the emotional intensity of the interactions. Lee apparently alternated between moments of extreme attention and periods of calculated detachment, a strategy that behavioral experts see as a potential psychological control tactic. The discovery of Erin's pregnancy seems to have been the catalyst that turned an already complex relationship into something potentially more sinister. The dark side of the relationship began to reveal itself through Erin's diaries and conversations with close friends. Records suggest that Lee may have utilized his experience and position of authority to create an alternate reality where his extramarital relationship seemed not only acceptable, but even justifiable. The manipulation seemingly extended beyond Erin, reaching a wider social circle that included both his own wife and Erin's husband, creating a complex web of lies and half-truths. The shocking revelations about the nature of the relationship indicate that Lee possibly maintained meticulous control over his different narratives. To his wife, he presented himself as the devoted husband. For Erin, as the misunderstood man in an unhappy marriage, and for the military community, as the exemplary professional. This ability to maintain multiple personas without arousing initial suspicion suggests a level of sophistication in social manipulation techniques that often precedes cases of domestic violence. What no one has told you about this case is how Erin's pregnancy possibly posed a threat to the elaborate control system established by Lee. Phone records and recovered text messages suggest a significant change in the tone of communications following this discovery. The dark secret that had kept their different lives apart was about to come to light, potentially setting off a series of events that would culminate in tragedy. Further investigation revealed possible patterns of manipulative behavior that extended beyond the relationship with Erin. Testimonials from acquaintances suggest that Lee may have developed a network of relationships based on different levels of trust and manipulation. The psychological profile that emerges from these reports indicates someone potentially capable of compartmentalizing different aspects of their life with remarkable accuracy, a trait that some experts associate with developing predatory behaviors. On June 28, 2014, a seemingly ordinary day in the California desert would turn into a shocking case that would shake the military community of 29 Palms. Erin Corwin, then 19 and pregnant, left home in the morning, telling her husband that she was going to explore places to photograph in Joshua Tree National Park. Text messages later recovered suggest that she had arranged a meeting with Lee, who had allegedly planned a special surprise to celebrate her pregnancy. The choice of remote location and the nature of the invitation may indicate possible prior planning of the events that would follow. The reconstruction of the events of that day, based on phone records and physical evidence, suggests that Lee may have used his military knowledge to strategically choose the location of the rendezvous. The mystery revealed during the investigation indicates that he possibly led Erin to an area known as the Rose of Peru mining district, an isolated place with several abandoned mining pits. The selection of this particular location raises questions about the premeditation of the brutal crime that was about to happen. Investigators believe the encounter may have escalated into a confrontation when Erin possibly expressed her intention to reveal the pregnancy. The psychological profile of a killer developed during the case suggests that Lee could have gone into a state of controlled panic as he saw his carefully constructed life threatened with falling apart. The truth behind those final moments remains partially unclear, but the physical evidence found points to an act of calculated violence, not a typical crime of passion. The shocking revelations about the method of the crime demonstrate the possible use of specific military knowledge. Erin's body was found in a deep mining pit, suggesting that the perpetrator had familiarity with the area and possibly planned to use the local geography to hide evidence. The tense investigation revealed that Lee could have done prior reconnaissance of the location, indicating a level of premeditation that contradicts the initial version of a chance encounter gone wrong. The dark side of the crime reveals itself in the meticulous details of its execution. Records from cell towers and security cameras in the region suggest a possible planned route, avoiding monitored areas. The absence of witnesses and the choice of time indicate that the criminal possibly considered several factors to minimize the risk of detection. These characteristics point to a crime that may have been carried out with a level of tactical planning that reflects military training. The errors that convicted him began to appear in the hours following the crime. Despite the apparent meticulous planning, small details were overlooked. Records of purchases, suspicious movements, and inconsistencies in his alibi began to form an incriminating picture. What initially seemed like a mysterious disappearance would soon prove to be one of the most disturbing cases in 29 Palms' recent history, demonstrating how even the most seemingly calculated plans can leave crucial trails for the investigation. During the tense investigation that followed the disappearance of Erin Corwin, Christopher Lee displayed behavior that caught the attention of experienced investigators. In the first interrogations, he apparently maintained a calm and cooperative posture, characteristics that some experts associate with individuals accustomed to pressure situations. Recordings of the interrogations suggest that Lee may have used attention-deflecting techniques, answering questions with half-truths and offering plausible explanations for his actions on the day of the disappearance. What no one told you about the investigation were the subtle patterns of possible manipulation during interrogations. Lee apparently alternated between moments of apparent concern for Erin's fate and periods of calculated emotional detachment. Interrogation techniques revealed possible inconsistencies in his narrative, particularly when confronted with physical evidence and phone records. With each new questioning session, small contradictions began to emerge in his carefully constructed story. The errors that convicted him began to pile up when investigators discovered discrepancies in his alibi. Cell tower records contradicted his version of his location on the day of the crime. In addition, witnesses reported suspicious behavior in the days following the disappearance. The psychological profile of a killer developed by investigators suggested someone who might be overconfident in his ability to deceive the authorities, leading to critical slips in his facade of innocence. The truth behind their attempts at manipulation began to emerge as investigators applied advanced interrogation techniques. Observers noticed subtle changes in their body language when confronted with specific evidence. The mystery revealed through detailed analysis of his statements showed possible patterns of defensive behavior and attempts at narrative control that often appear in similar cases of premeditated criminality. The shocking revelations kept coming as the investigation progressed. Records of suspicious purchases, unexplained movements, and deleted communications began to form a more complete picture of events. The tense interrogation revealed how Lee possibly tried to create elaborate alibis and cover stories, demonstrating a level of premeditation that contradicts the image of innocence he was trying to project. The dark side of his defensive strategy became more evident when he tried to deflect suspicion to others. This tactic, which some investigators consider common in cases of sophisticated criminals, ended up backfiring on him. Each attempt to manipulate the narrative created new inconsistencies that investigators could exploit, eventually leading to the discovery of crucial evidence that would break their seemingly well-constructed alibi. Christopher Lee's trial has turned into one of the most intriguing cases in recent California judicial history. During the hearings, the behavior of the accused caught the attention of those present in the courtroom. Observers noted how he maintained a seemingly calm and collected demeanor, even when confronted with disturbing evidence of the brutal crime. Such conduct in court could suggest a remarkable capacity for emotional dissociation, a trait that some experts consider common in cases of premeditated crimes. The shocking revelations kept coming out during the court proceedings. The prosecution presented a meticulously constructed sequence of events, revealing possible levels of planning that went beyond what was initially suspected. What no one told you about the trial was how the defense tried to construct an alternative narrative, suggesting that the relationship between Lee and Erin was consensual and that her death could have been the result of an unplanned confrontation. However, the physical and testimonial evidence seemed to tell a different story. The psychological profile of a murderer presented during the trial suggested someone potentially capable of maintaining different personas: the exemplary military man, the dedicated family man, and possibly a calculating manipulator. The tense investigation revealed how Lee apparently managed to compartmentalize different aspects of his life, maintaining a facade of normalcy even while, according to the prosecution, planning and executing a complex crime. The errors that convicted him were systematically exposed during the process. The prosecution demonstrated how minor inconsistencies in his alibi, combined with physical evidence and digital records, formed an incriminating picture. The mystery revealed through the evidence presented suggested a possible pattern of predatory behavior that culminated in the crime against Erin Corwin. The defense tried to contest this evidence, but each attempt seemed only to reinforce the prosecution's theory. The sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole reflected the seriousness of the crime and the circumstances surrounding it. During the sentencing pronouncement, observers noted how Lee maintained his characteristic composure, a behavior that some experts suggest may indicate a possible lack of remorse or a deep emotional disconnect with his actions. The impact of this sentence on the military community of 29 Palms was significant, raising questions about how signs of problematic behavior can go unnoticed in highly structured environments. The dark side of this case continues to generate debates in the field of criminal justice and forensic psychology. The real story behind the crime, the investigation, and the trial raises important questions about how society can identify and prevent potentially dangerous behavior before it escalates into violence. The murderous mind is an enigma that psychology is still trying to decipher. But one thing is certain: no one is immune to crossing the path of someone like this. Here, we analyze hidden behaviors, patterns, and signals from psychological studies and behavioral evidence. We do not assert absolute truths, but we make assumptions based on science and the most intriguing profiles of criminology. And now I ask you, to what extent do you really know who is around you? If this content made you see the world in a new way, imagine what else you can discover in the next videos. So, now you know. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to understand how the human mind really works. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because in the next videos, we will explore even more disturbing cases. See you in the next one.